Hello, everybody. We have a really special guest joining us today. And while I'm talking, I need to add in Tom as well, who's here from the Fallout Lorecast. As you
I'm
can
here.
See
Hi, everybody.
You can hear Tom. Oh my God, I'm being attacked by a dog in game. Hang on.
Wait, you're playing a game while doing this?
Well, we're going through Appalachia here. Getting attacked by...
Where can I see this? Is that link you sent me?
Yep. Twitch.tv/ChadFallout76 podcast.
Okay, we're doing technical support on the fly. This is the essence of live. I love it.
We're doing it live.
All right.
That works.
All righty. Well, hello. I'm, I guess, the special guest. My name is Ferret Baudoin. I was the lead designer on Wastelanders and the lead quest designer on Fallout 76 launch. And yeah, oh wow. There's the map.
And oh wow, yeah, look at that. Stuff's moving around on the screen. Oh, there I am. Yeah, we're doing this live.
We're resizing.
We're doing this live.
This is fine.
We're resizing you. So thank you so much. Why don't we just go ahead and start the conversation while Ken sets everything up? Thank you so much for joining us, Ferret. If you guys have listened to some of the other stuff that we put out in the past, you know that we've talked with Ferret before, but he is very kind to come and join us again to talk about some of the stories and some of the things going on in Appalachia with Wastelanders and some of the behind the scenes stuff. Ferret, we are super excited to talk to you. Thank you for being here.
Oh, I love being here for such a wonderful cause as well. Like, truly, it has been one of the most terrible, one of the most terrible years of my life. And having an opportunity for the community to come together and to try to do something good and noble in the world is touching. And I'm just honored to be here. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Ken, are you pretty good? We're getting close to being finally set up, I think.
Almost there.
So why don't we start this off? I know you've got, if you got some intro, I'm sure you've got tons of stories to tell us. Is there something that like is right at the top of your list? Is there kind of like a real banger, a real exciting thing to tell us about either designing the world and the stories or any of that side of things that we don't get a whole lot of insight into?
Well, I guess maybe the thing I want to start with is, like, I get the honor of speaking with you guys, but I represent a massive team. So when I talk about the lore, a lot of times this isn't me. This is very talented writers or artists, other designers just coming up with wonderful stuff and stories and such. I'm involved in that process, obviously, but I get to talk about other people's work. If about the only thing I can say definitively, we're talking about Brotherhood of Steel at launch, then I can talk. Then I'm speaking firsthand. But many of the other things, there are people out there that I hope you get that. I'm just trying to convey the wonderful stuff that they do.
Yes. And for people who don't know, what exactly do you mean by you get to talk firsthand about the Brotherhood?
Well, because I actually wrote all the Brotherhood of Steel stuff for launch. So everything to do, with Paladin Integrity, Integrity's Thunder, all the various quests for that. Those were things I did while I was the lead quest designer. So those I can if you like that, then yay, that's on me. But if anything else, there are talented other people that were responsible.
Yeah. So how big is, I don't know if there's things that I'm asking that you can't talk about, then feel free to say, well, we don't share that information. But you know what? I mean, you're talking about lots of other people here. How big is the team? How many people are writing these stories and coming up with this stuff?
Oh, man. I mean, that is a tricky loads.
Yeah.
The thing is that, like, and not just the usual suspects. Like, I definitely wanted to mention the artists because a lot of times the artists come up with things as well. And there's a ton of environmental storytelling and just other things. And that comes from a variety of disciplines. So everybody is, trying to contributing to the lore and the game in various ways. So and designers, I don't even want to guess how many, but like over the course of it, lots. I think almost everybody had a hand in it at one point or another in it on the design team.
Wow. And that's one of the things I love about video game stories. I also love this about role playing and creating your own adventures and these kinds of things, is this aspect of cooperative storytelling. The idea that the way that the things are happening in the world and the way the stories unfold aren't just the perspective of a single author creating a thing. They come from many different people, from different perspectives on that lore, from the things that they value more than, say, other people. And that's what's wonderful about that, is that it matches the way stories in the real world evolve. The stories of our own lives are based on the retellings of many different people from many different places, contributing to our understanding of that story. And in a video game, matching reality in that way is actually really, really cool, as opposed to, say, something like a novel.
No, totally. I mean, for sure, the game is better for having so many voices in the chorus. And it's one of those things that, like, you know, everybody brings their life experience. And this sort of, the things where I think things get really exciting is like when you're talking about like where things collide, like you know, because we had there were teams that were involved in each of the factions, for example, the Responders, the Enclave, all that. And the really fun thing is when you dealt with things where things were basically bouncing off of each other. So it's just like, okay, hey, Hank Madigan's one of your characters. Awesome. You know what I'd really love? I need someone to be doing something really badass over here. Can I use Hank? And then they're like, yeah, use Hank. And then it becomes just further enriching that person's lore and their story. Because one of the most fun things about designing 76, at least from a writing perspective, is just trying to create as immersive and believable a world as we could. And, you know, sort of the archaeology and timeline of where you're going through, and it's just like, wow, this character was over here and they did this and they bounced over here and did that. I want to say that there's maybe a couple of really deep cuts that I don't know if people have figured out. I mean, mind you, it's arcane. It is like, oh wow, it turns out that this person, they are the recruit for the Brotherhood of Steel, aren't they? It's like, yes, they are.
We'll have to be looking for that.
I remember too that you had mentioned that in a few instances you'll write the long form of the story, and then you'll playfully, like, trash. You'll throw it out so only you know the answer.
Well, the funny thing is also, just because this is such an ongoing project, that deliberate ambiguity is not only helpful for possibly making it to where it's fascinating to discover, but also gives us room to sort of say, hey, you know what? In my head, you know, like Scribe Grant died, right? Right. You know, but do we see his body?
Right. Huh. Do we have proof?
Sure. He says he's going to die. But, you know, did he? I don't know. Well, you know, it gives you possibilities, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In the pre-show, we were talking about the unreliable narrator. And this is something I want to bring back up for our audience to be able to hear this part of the discussion. And I think you and I are on the same page with this. Human beings, by our very nature, are unreliable narrators. And one of the things that the community can get hung up on is when they take a specific line as absolute truth and canon. This character said this thing in this holotape at this location in this game. It was Fallout 2, it was Fallout 3, it was whatever. And this is the way things are. And then they hang everything else on that as if it's this solid post that is unmovable. And the nature of humans are that we are fallible, that we are unreliable, that person may have to the best version of themselves gotten it right, or made an accidental mistake that they were ignorant about, or to their worst self were absolutely lying. And we, as just somebody who's reading a single document out of context, don't necessarily know that is truth that we can hang something on. And I know that this is a big part of the way you guys write the world and the way that people in the past have written the world when it comes to Fallout. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Sure. Like, the thing is that, like, what we're trying to do is mimic reality. Or I can't speak for everyone. I I know when I write, I'm often trying to make it as believable, as immersive as possible, which means that if everybody was accurate, do you know how unrealistic that would be? It's like, no, everybody has point of view. People have agendas. People make mistakes. I've had opportunities to be interviewed, and many times over my career, and it is rare, very rare, that an article is 100% right, and they were recording it, and they were talking with me, and it's just like there's always just human error seeps in. That's just the way we work. And so it's tough because there have been times where literally I have written something where it's like, okay, to me, it's pretty clear this guy is just wrong. You know, he's off base. There's other people that are saying what I think is probably more correct. And yet people will get like, oh, you're just being inconsistent, sloppy writing. It's like, no, that was not sloppy writing. That was very intentional. I mean, to be clear, we, the developers, are also human, and we do make mistakes, and sometimes, oops, that was not the intent. But I mean, the thing is, I think a lot of times when we go through and, you know, add new lore, it's like, yes, there's going to be some differences. And that's okay to me. Like we try we have lots of meetings where we talk about specific bits to make sure that the things fit together. But you know, at the end of the day, it's like it's okay if sometimes a holotape was wrong.
Yeah.
Well, let's
go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, let's get our tour of Appalachia started as well, since we're a little late here. If you wanted to send me anywhere in the world, where would you like to start?
I think one of the places which I love the way it came together, and it was such a tour de force of all sorts of people. Like if you wanted to go someplace where you see virtually every faction colliding in dramatic ways, Charleston capital.
Charleston, made in Appalachia.
Because Charleston, I mean, like one of the meta things that we were like a meta theme for 76, which I'm sure people get, is that what we wanted to explore is that you have all these factions, right? And nobody is evil. I mean, Enclave, okay, maybe you can make the case. But even then, if you really think about it from their perspective, Ultra Patriot, and the types of people that were dealing with a life or death struggle against China, that, you know, maybe you do need to go to extremes in order to ensure that your country is safe, right? So even they have a perspective. But these factions, you know, there's so many tragedies if they had just worked together. And Charleston is an example where you can see things all pinging-ponging together in just the sort of tragic way that sometimes humans do. Because in Charleston, you have, like, this was initially, when the responders were formed, Charleston being the capital of West Virginia, it made sense that was where it was going to be, based. And it was actually thriving for a while. It was one of the best, because West Virginia was lightly nuked compared to, heavily nuked compared to some other places. And so this was a chance for humanity to really, you know, sort of try to have a resurgence, to try to come back. The responders were like, you know, kind of almost the best hope for the common man in Appalachia. And this is where they were based. But as you can see, tragedy. And the fun thing about the tragedy here is that it was multiple factions worth of things. Like if you don't want spoilers, oh my God, change the channel because we're going to be getting into it. But like, you know, at the first level of the onion is that what happened is that Rosalind was captured by the responders, and she was the girlfriend of David Thorpe. So, like, you know, the, you know, very, very high up raider, girlfriend got captured and killed in custody, and David Thorpe just went ballistic, and he got a nuke and he blew up a dam on Christmas Day that just wiped out vast chunks of humanity, which is an untold tragedy. Like talk about a what if. And and even then, like the raiders themselves, like if the responders had just helped out a little, maybe it wouldn't have gotten that bad, right?
Right.
But they went at each other just head on right away. And so here you are, and the flood came and it just wiped it out. The responders sort of clawed together. But a deeper cut of that is actually the person that wound up blowing up the dam. I mean, the raiders don't normally have that sort of ordinance. Back in the days before the Brotherhood of Steel, when they were bit, like Taggarty, like Maxon at one point, was more idealistic, more trusting of people. And one of the things which really cemented her on her path is when she realized that you can't trust people and that these people will screw you over, because one of their recruits basically left Camp Venture with some stolen ordnance and such. And I guess I'm pretty sure it's in the lore, but that's the thing that blew up the dam.
Oh.
And Taggarty knew that.
That was one of the questions that people had, because they were wondering, one of the questions actually from Reddit, they were wondering, because our fat man weapons can't do anywhere near that level of damage, because this even a weakened dam, if you hit it in the right spot, but this is like severe, like that dam is like wrecked.
Yeah. And I love that you can see it like on the screen right now. This is the dam, and this is the results of that incident right there in the world.
Yeah. Night Redcliffe. I think that was your question, Night Redcliffe.
I love it because all of this is, so many people coming together and so many different, stories all culminate in Charleston. And it becomes this pivotal kind of a pivotal moment where the sort of die is cast and things are going to be really, really tough in Appalachia. There's a chance even then that they could have, this wasn't the end, but like, if you're talking about the fall of Appalachia, this is one of, you can make the case that this is it. The Christmas Day tragedy, that is where Appalachia was not going to be a happy ending story.
Even when you think about the psychological toll of that, for everyone to get together, for the most part, the region is stabilized. They have a power base, people are living. And then, deciding to get together for the holidays and then just complete death and destruction on a ridiculous scale. Talk about defeat just through the loss of hope alone is brutal.
I think the psyche, well, because the East Coast chapter of the Brotherhood would never be the same afterwards. That this was a very big deal that humans did this to each other, and these are the people that Elder Maxon is telling us that we should trust. And then Taggarty is like, trust who? For real, you want to trust these yahoos? Because they are murderous. Like, you do not understand these raiders up over in the Savage Divide. There is no way in hell I would trust them. So I think the tragedy is that people, because when an existential threat comes, if you can't put all those differences aside and work together, then things are dark. And I mean, the funny thing is reality is stranger than fiction these days. Like, you could say the same, no matter what you believe, that if we could come together better, that 2020 would be much better if we all just somehow could find common ground, right?
Right.
And yet, just like the game, it's just like sometimes that is so much easier said than done, because you get like blood upon blood upon blood, and at some point, like it's human that it's hopeless to think that these people would actually rise above it.
Right, right. And that's something we learn from history. It's way more common for humans to come to odds with each other among different groups than it is to work together. And in the few times that it does come out that things work together, those are times where it's notable. And those are times where it's usually a great leader with an amazing community that works very hard and sacrifices a lot in order for that to actually work out. And those are very interesting stories.
I agree. Like for me, like I've been in recent decades, I don't know, a long time, been reading more and more of history, and like it is fascinating just like how a great civilization comes to be, and then what are the things that make it go away, right? Like what are and then Fallout, you could absolutely really ruminate upon, like, okay, so if you're talking about the fall of the Roman Empire, okay, what is the fall of, pre-war US? Like what were the fault lines? What were the real problems? And I think that that's something we explored with Appalachia, not necessarily in the bigger thing, but we tried to look at it regionally, and we tried to say, okay, why was this not working? And, trying to sort of expand upon, this is reality. Then there's the divergence, and then we wind up in Fallout, pre-war times. Okay, so how did things evolve, and then how is it that people just couldn't, like, hey, you 1%, could you just give your miners just a teeny bit of your money, and then maybe untold tragedy would be averted. But then you read their perspectives, and they're just like, they're so myopic. They're focused on, okay, no, we're dealing with these corporations, these other things. And occasionally you get some good people in there saying, like, listen, if I do that, the competitors are going to be at an advantage, and then we're all out of business. So
a rock in a hard place and another hard place and another rock. Right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny you talk about pre-war and kind of the seeds that were sown. I'm standing in Senator Blackwell's office now, which becomes kind of a nexus point where you first get that first little taste of the enclave. And it's interesting how he got caught up in all of that. Mm-hmm. A great story that hasn't been told is the formation of the enclave pre-war. Like, did that start as an underground kind of political movement? Like, I think that's kind of a fun sandbox.
And what can you tell? What can you tell us about that? Because I'm sure that's shrouded in mystery for a reason.
It's super interesting.
I will talk. There are things I will talk about, and things I won't. I'm not going to touch that one. But like, I will say that it was really fascinating on the Enclave side to sort of explore, like, okay, because to me, like, for the Enclave story is basically like you have this shadow government, and what happens when communication breaks down. And also, like, these are very powerful people. We're captains of industry, major political figures. And, Blackwell, kind of, he was a senator, but he was actually not in on their game. In fact, he was part of the secessionist movement with the Free States. And so he was a pariah, the biggest pariah there was. And yet, he would have gone to the Enclave bunker, which would have been very interesting. He probably would have died, it'd be my guess. I mean, that's just speculation.
Do you think they wouldn't have let him in? You think they would have, or?
I think Eckhart would have totally killed him.
That made it there were part of survive very long. So I doubt he would have been an exception. Yeah. But what's fun about the Enclave is just sort of exploring, like, okay, what are the different sort of ultra patriotic sort of views that people could have? And, as soon as you're sort of all stuck in a bunker together, it's just I think it's very natural that it's going to get very dark fast, because these are extremists and they are now all trapped with themselves. Which is almost hell if you think about it.
Yeah. Well, to your point, extremism only works when you have somebody who is outside of the in-group with which to direct your anger and your focus and your blame. And when you no longer have that, then that's a recipe for, I don't know, conflict at least.
It becomes also
totally.
you build your power around. Your power is attained through that constant misdirection, or you constantly have to have that shadowy enemy. And one of the greatest villains, I was talking to Ferret about this when we first talked about doing this. One of the greatest villains that we never ever meet is President Eckhart, who goes from, Secretary of Agriculture to pretty much all of the destruction, everything that went wrong in Appalachia, the nightmare of scorched beasts and plague and all of this stuff, the stupid the liberators, everything came down to him and his fanatical desire to destroy China at any means necessary, to the point that he was blind to everything else. That's crazy.
But the thing is that it's what I love about Eckhart is he does sound like that sounds terrible, vile, horrible, but in his own head, to me, I think he's like, if we don't do it, they will do it to us, right? Like, because he knows that there's got to be his mirror image over in China, if not far worse. So it's kind of like, are you willing to gamble that they are going to be better than we are? Because I'm telling you, we're not. Like, we are willing to go to the mattresses on this. And, I will do whatever it takes in order to protect America. Even if that means I might have to destroy some of America, I'm willing to make that sacrifice. So it's a very intriguing. I think clearly he's a villain, but I think the best villains have a perspective. Like very few people are a villain in their own head. They feel
justified.
Yeah. And I think you could build his case to where it's just like, the only thing is he was apparently wrong, right? Because America didn't, at least up until, Fallout 4 times, hasn't received that sort of second wave of stuff from China, right? So he was wrong, but he could have been right. And if so, he would be the greatest American hero ever, right?
If Nick and you is wrong, I don't want to be right.
Well, I think you're tapping into just one of the core natures of human psychology, is that we all make assumptions that everyone else operates on the same structures that we do mentally. So if you are somebody who is willing to go to extremes, somebody who's willing to lie, somebody who's willing to cheat and steal in order to win, then you're going to assume that everybody else does too. And so therefore that is the foundation of the way the rules of the game are played.
And also, if you take in the extreme xenophobia of a lot of people pre-war towards China, they're not even only going to assume that people are as bad as them. They're going to assume the Chinese are far worse. Mm-hmm. So it's even scarier because it's like, hey, these are the things we're prepared to do, but we're not communists. So, what would the commies do? It'd be even worse. But, right. It's kind of, if you stare into the abyss too long, the abyss stares back type of situations, right? To where, Eckhart pursuing this became, probably the worst villain, for his time period.
And you may not be able to even answer this question, but I couldn't find anything, and I've always been curious. The Enclave bunker was always designed to be the main hub, the central hub of the Enclave, where the president should have been brought, but for reasons beyond understanding wasn't. So you got Eckhart in there, and the Enclave kind of come in and take it over. Its connections to the oil rig had been terminated. So I've always been curious if that was Eckhart's power play, like if this was always his idea to kind of get in there and then just kind of seize control, or if there was something else going on to sever that communication.
There are stories in there, and they have not been told fully. So I'm not gonna. I will say that, like, it's one of those. The funny thing is, it's a story that may never get told, which to me is both wonderful and sad at the same time. That there are mysteries. Like, I could answer that, but that is something that may have its moment to shine at some point. However, you are quite correct that how and why the connection between White Springs got connected with Raven Rock and the Poseidon oil platform. That just doesn't normally happen. That is something that they would have tried very hard not to do. So what happens? So it is indeed a fantastic question. Why? Who? For what purpose? So good questions.
Yeah, it's interesting. If anyone ever stumbles on it, someone on YouTube took the time to reassemble a lot of the damaged holotapes, security recordings, and you can listen to the whole drama unfold in there in chronological order. And it's incredibly amazing storytelling to see how everything that went down in here that you never get to see. But it's interesting. Lost Threads too. There was a whole PvP scripted event or quest that was around becoming president that we never got a chance to see. Do you think that'll ever make its reappearance? Maybe.
All right. So, yeah, I love that quest. Oh man, I love that quest. That
the
was
concept,
glorious.
it sounds amazing.
But the thing is, all right. Some inside baseball. I wanted to bring that quest back badly, very badly, but it became abundantly clear that that was going to be a PvP tour de force, and it was ambitious. It was a very ambitious quest. And once we started seeing the way people actually played, it was clear that that wasn't a very good use of resources.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I don't think if we said, hey, there's this elaborate PvP thing where the winner gets to be president, I don't think it would be run very much, no matter how cool it was. So, you know, because Monster Mash, I think, is lots of fun, but it's very hard to actually catch somebody that's willing to play Monster Mash with you. And it is, I have never, in hundreds of hours of playing live, ever seen more than one person that I could play against. And it's been a handful of times I was able to even play anyone that would do that. So I didn't think that was a good fit anymore. And you can see evidence of it all the place. I mean, one thing that I think that, I think always in Fallout, it was very clear that, you know, the developers from early on knew that, like, you know, pre-war happened right before Halloween, right? So you could see that sort of influence in the lore. The thing that I thought was, you know, fun for us is I don't think many people played with the elections as much, it being right before the election too. I mean, mind you, it's not it's an off-year election. But that also allowed us to play with things like, okay, what sort of things are on local politics and stuff like that. So you can hear, you know, the governor talking about, like, you know, the automation bills that they're trying to get through and stuff like that. And I thought that that was a lot of fun because it added another layer of realism to the world as well. Yeah.
Interesting. Is there Ken, is there another location we want to go to?
Yeah.
Do we want to move on to other stuff?
I have a feeling, and I know you talked about this the last time we were at QuakeCon. I want to take us to Point Pleasant because Lord knows cryptids are a lot of fun.
I had passing understanding. Look, I would say a better than average understanding of Appalachia before I worked on Fallout 76. But actually, working on 76 and treating it seriously, I've learned a lot. And I had no idea the regional cryptids that are just so awesome. Like I think we've told this story before, that like when Sheep Squatch was first proposed, I was just like, okay, Fallout's goofy, but we're not that goofy. And then he linked, it got linked to the wiki page on it, and it was like, glorious. Do it. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I have to be honest about that. I wasn't familiar with this Sheep Squatch until Fallout 76. And I was like, are they just making up cryptids now? What is this? And then, you know, sure enough, you know, of course I have to look into it for the Fallout Lorecast. And I was like, huh, no, this is a real thing. Like, they're still referencing real world stuff. They're not making up weird crap on their own for this one. Yes.
Oh no, the Mothman. Yeah. I adore the Mothman. Like the funny thing is you can never quite tell. like sometimes you know that you've got lightning in a bottle, right? Like that you can just sort of feel it, that this is going to catch on. And certainly I knew that the Mothman was cool and I thought that he'd be well regarded, but I didn't realize he was going to be quite so, like, you know, the fact that the Mothman Festival in West Virginia, for like, at least I haven't, man, I need to go there. Like after, you know, pandemic is over, I really want to go there and see, because I know that after 76 released, there was a huge influx of people, and that they had some, like, you know, Fallout 76 type merch and stuff like that. And I thought that was just awesome. You know,
that is awesome.
On a meta sense, like, it was wonderful. You know, the funny thing is that I was never worried that Appalachians were going to be offended or upset with the way we were treating Appalachia, because I have seen many movies with it, and I'm like, no, we're not doing anything like that. Like, we might occasionally do something which gets people's hackles up a little bit, but in general, we try to be extremely respectful and try to really get to the human drama of this. And the fact that, like, there's a lot of, you know, Appalachia has some problems as a region these days. And the fact that it is actually indirectly helped at all is so heartwarming, because it feels like almost like it's the happy ending that the game never got.
That's so meta. That's so interesting.
There was
really cool.
Over at the White Springs event, you know, for the pre-launch, there was actually some people from, like, sort of local lore, you know, historical archive type people and stuff, and they were grilling us. And at the end, it felt good. At the end, he's like, "All right, it sounds like you guys did a good job."
One of the questions was about the Mothman eggs. If the Mothman eggs can become different types of Mothman, because we see different types in the world. I thought that was an interesting question. Because
or if Baby Yoda would eat them.
Yeah,
is that one of them?
Those eggs are, like, they're very weird looking.
They are odd, that is for sure. It is one of those that, like, I think that, you know, a lot of times you make things and you have deliberately, like, questions that are left, and you deliberately leave them, right? You, especially in a game like this, we want to leave room. So there's a lot of stuff that we could do with the Mothman for sure. Like, I think we already did quite a number of things, but he's a lot of fun. They're creepy. They're just so creepy.
Yeah, there they are. There's the eggs on the screen right now. They look like little red cupcakes or something.
I think they look like little Tonka truck tires.
Yeah.
It was funny because there's actually this one, I think it's one of the vending machines, has two red lights that are positioned like this. Uh-huh. And I was asking the artist that did it. She's like, because I told the artist that did it the story that, like, I turned the corner, flipped me out, right? Because I was like, oh, Mothman. He's like, oh, it's just a vending machine. It's fine. And then he's like, yep, did that intentionally. It's like, you bastard.
I thought so. I thought that was a thing. Because there are definitely places in the world where you turn and look, and there are two lights set up in a way where you have to look at, especially when they're in the distance, and you have to look at them and go, wait a minute. Okay, no, that's not a Mothman. Yeah.
Oh, no, very, very creative people on the project. I mean, the thing is, if you work on something for years, you can have a really good chance to sink your teeth into it, to really play with the ideas, and, you know, well, play with the players' expectations too.
Yeah.
I'm headed somewhere now to, speaking of cryptids. So once we had Wastelanders, we had this little guy up here that appeared on Seneca Rocks. Boy, did that get everybody talking.
Which one?
It's the Thunderbird looking thing pinned up to the rocks.
We're guessing it's the Thunderbird.
Right.
We're guessing it's the Thunderbird. Yeah, we don't really know, but yeah, it showed up.
Yes, it did. I can confirm that.
And that is all I'm going to say right now.
But how cool does this thing look? Can you imagine fighting that? Much less who pinned that up there?
Yeah. These are great questions.
These are great questions. Must have been. I'm guessing it was super mutants. I mean, how else do you climb up on that thing and pin up a giant bird unless you're some sort of giant creature yourself?
The funny thing is in the Fallout universe, there are so many rationales I can come up with of why that thing is up there and how that happened.
Chat's been super patient here, so I'm going to ask just a few of their questions that they had for you. They've been really excited to talk to you. Let's see, we have.
Actually, I've got one. Unless you've got one right now. I was going to fill the gap, but well, I think this is probably an interesting question. Having worked previously on the other games, is there anything that comes to mind that was revealed in Fallout 76 that existed and was hinted at in previous games, and we finally got some sort of reveal or at least more information about it that clarified something from the previous games, like knowledge about something that happened with the Brotherhood or the Enclave or the state of the pre-war world or anything like that you can think of that was like later clarified?
I actually think that President Eckhart, Secretary of Agriculture then, Eckhart, and sort of getting at least some hints of the machinations that were going on with the pre-war government and the FEV. I think I don't know if there was anything truly revolutionary that was exposed, but I think it painted a lot more details about like, okay, who were some of the principals, what was going on. It also helped explain to some degree, like, okay, why are there more like super mutants over here as well? And I also think that like I think it helps explain why you might see super mutants in any number of places, because it was, there were layers of things that were going on pre-war. I think one of the most fun things for me was that it was a bit intimidating reading before we launched about the many articles about like the Brotherhood of Steel, being a retcon that they were here and such. What people may not know is that I was actually going to be doing over at Black Isle. I was going to be doing the Brotherhood of Steel there on the Fallout 3 that never shipped. That was my faction, and so I was very, very up on the lore of that, and talked with the people who created the original Fallouts on that. And so to me, I knew that this could be we could do this, and in a way that I think would be hopefully add value not only to our game, but hopefully like make it feel like, wow, there's a richer history going on here. Like I've always been fascinated with Maxon as a historical figure. In fact, I was planning on doing a Maxon's bunker there. And so to me, it was bliss to be able to have the opportunity to do this. And so just being able to sort of give, because sort of exploring the apocrypha of the Brotherhood of Steel. Like this, these are some stuff that later on you will not hear these stories. You may be able to figure out many reasons why you would not hear these stories later on. But this is the actual Elder Maxon and what he believed.
Yeah, I find that a lot of people make the assumption that just because this is a new game, that any information that we get in this game was made up now, and that it's all retconning other stuff. But to your point, there's a lot of stuff that already existed underneath the stories of the other games that just didn't come to light yet. And now we're actually getting to see it.
Particularly if that was stuff that you thought about doing before, back in the Fallout 3 that didn't ship.
I very much wanted to explore all the number of things. I actually think that overall, like, I think I'm a better writer now than I was then. So I think I did it better than I would have at that point in my career. But to me, I think I always wanted to explore it, like, because to me, they're such an interesting group. At parts noble, at parts, like just completely introverted and not caring, and just trying to imagine like how you go from the principled letters that you see from Roger Maxon as he's basically seceding from the Union to the Brotherhood of Steel. Is that is a journey. And so to me, it was fun to be able to at least put a a little bit of breadcrumbs to where you can see like, okay, this is how they went from here to there.
Yeah. Because and this again to the point of humans is that we go through these journeys. We don't hold the same opinions all the time. Our experiences change and sculpt us over time, and that's what makes a character interesting is the character's journey. Ken, I know you were about to ask a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the questions that Intrepid 359 had, Paladin Swafford buried outside Huntersville. They wanted to know if it was the same Swafford that's mentioned in the Enclave bunker. Do you know?
Swafford? Wow.
Swafford. Paladin Swafford.
That one, that's not leaping to mind, which is unusual. I'm usually really on top of that. I think, I don't recollect that because Paladin Integrity, if it was a knight or something like that, I could see that being somebody, but I think that there was only one Paladin. Oh, are you talking about Tex Rogers?
Maybe.
Because Tex Rogers is actually one of my favorite. Like I just one day I was just writing and I just had this idea of this one basically veteran, super badass veteran that, just imagine like if you were on a routine trip and then the bombs fell, right? And you are 1,000 miles away from home. And then just the idea of like trying to get home, right? And eventually Tex gives up. That it's clear that, he's not going to make it. And he sees these people and he's like, these people are good. They're trying to do the right thing. I think I found a home. But it was this touching story, like just trying to like that was a lot of fun also for just the Brotherhood of Steel, because they haven't become zealots yet. Some become zealots very fast. I mean, which I think is very realistic, right? Like if the bombs fall, people will cling to things that give them sanity and hope, or just even a sense of order, right? Because everything else has gone to hell. So, yeah. But I think a lot of people are just like, Paladin? Knights? For real? And
right.
It's fun to explore that before people are like, because in Fallout 4 times, it's like, of course. Yeah, that's just the Brotherhood of Steel.
That's just who they are. That's who they've always been. Yeah.
Yeah, whereas this was an opportunity to explore. It's like, how do you go from a normal, I'm in the Army Rangers and now I'm a knight.
Yeah. We have some questions here about like the canonicity of things. So the first one would be nuclear winter. How canon is nuclear winter?
Well, clearly, like, it would imply that the world is over. So I think that's us having some fun.
No!
I mean, but, that being said, never say never.
I mean, it would be an interesting...
I can see we're just one brilliant idea away from a writer to squaring that circle to saying, yeah, no, that happened. That was 10 years after Appalachia. We tell our stories. This is the bookend.
This is the very end bookend of what happens in Appalachia. This is the way the world burns.
I mean, it would be an interesting way to end in the future, 76, that everything that we're doing ends up completely devastating the region and nobody ever talks about Appalachia ever again in the future. We destroy everything as players.
I should say it's reading through the chat. Nuclear winter, like it's. I think that it's indeterminate, because once we get past a certain point in the future, like we're writing the future of Appalachia, right? So it is clearly not like the next year, because we're working on that content now, right? So yeah, but it is fascinating to consider like how the world ends.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. This is 2772. Like who knows, right? Another question about canonicity is about the items in the shop, like some of these different skins for some of the power armor and some of there's a lot of things that kind of push the boundaries of, say, believability in some regards. What do you guys, how do you carry that stuff internally? How do you consider that?
I think if you're buying it in the store, that you are basically you're choosing to go outside the game in order to customize your experience,
right?
The same way that you would getting a mod that you particularly enjoy. So I tend not to sweat that stuff, and if people can rationalize it, then fantastic. Or if they just want to say, no, hey, I just got something that makes me look cool, more power to you.
Yeah, I think you could even justify it as your character went out of their way to create this thing. Like,
sure,
you have T-51 power armor, and you wanted it to look like the Enclave, and so you painted an Enclave symbol on it and did it up to look like the Enclave. Congratulations, now you've got it.
No, totally.
Oh.
I think that just looking at the enormous creativity. Just watching you die, sorry. Just looking at the creativity of our fans and the sort of stuff that they riff off of, it's just like, sure, like if you were really your outfit, people are going to trick it out every which way, right?
Right.
So
right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
There are in a lot of the previous Fallout games, there are almost really beautifully designed Art Deco elements. One of the most pervasive of which is these very scary sentinel-looking heads that adorned, even back in Fallout 3, the buildings in the wasteland. They're kind of, oh my, there's a lot of people in there. Where you see these heads everywhere, particularly even when we come down in here and we go say hello to the interloper, if that's his proper name, where you have the heads kind of, I think I went past it, looking down on this figure. Aside from just being an ornamental thing, is there anything to those figures that you know?
Those, I think a lot of times there is a tremendous amount of environmental storytelling, and you'd almost have to talk to the author about what's going on there. But to me, I think especially for 76, almost everything you've seen are people that have gone through the war. And I think there are people that are going to handle it well. And I think or as well as can be expected. And there are people that are going to handle it very, very badly. And I think they're probably going to go to some very macabre places. And just seeing it was wonderful that we were able to get the Mothman cultists, for example, in Wastelanders, as an example of the things that people will do to just sort of have a shred of a chance of mentally getting through it, right? So yeah. I could absolutely see people doing exactly this, right? Or it could even be a tribute, right? But I think that's one of the beauties is that we just like for the writers, there's a tremendous number of voices in the choir. On the art side as well, there's, for the environmental art storytelling that is going on by them and the level designers, a tremendous amount of different. Yeah, that's just spooky. I love it.
Yeah, those faces right there.
Creepy heads looking down.
It's kind of an Art Deco thing. It harkens back to some of the original Fallout 1 stuff you see in the artwork.
Yeah.
No, that's just.
I mean, they're beautifully terrifying. This kind of Cthulhu mythos here.
Yeah, it's good stuff. There's so many. I have gone through. Fans have outpaced me because there's some fans who put in an impressive number of hours. Hats off. But for me, I've played this game a ton, and despite the fact that I've probably walked every inch of the land, there are still secrets. There's still things I uncovered that it was just like, wow, I did not know this was here. Especially if it's something to where it doesn't have a direct lore statement, if if it's writing, I think I've read almost everything. But if it's environmental, it's like, no, there's secrets upon secrets in this game.
That's great. That's amazing. And that's something I loved about the game, even when it launched, and it obviously got a lot of flack for not having characters and traditional storytelling, but the world is so dense with things to uncover, even from the beginning, before we had characters to talk to tell us directly about those things. I've always enjoyed that about these games.
Oh, me too. I think that there's, it's kind of wonderful because one thing that we focus on is we focus on the world, right? Like, I think that's one of the things that Bethesda does very, very well, is that we're always thinking about, like, okay, let's treat this seriously. Let's think about this. You know, there's a lot of integrity to it, and arguments about, like, does this make sense, get discussed very seriously, which is wonderful, because I think that's not always the case at some studios. Some studios, like, and I'm not faulting that, because just focusing on fun, right? Or just
there's a lot to focus on.
Yeah, like it's not all games have to be that way. But as someone that loves storytelling, like world storytelling, the fact that we try to give it a sense of place and of logic to it, and I feel if you do it enough, and if you do the math enough, that if people see something that doesn't quite add up, they will start to believe, I don't think this is a mistake. I think that this is here for a reason. And then it starts making your brain think about, like, why? Like, Eckhart is terrible in all these places, but in this one note, he says this thing that's kind of nice. Why? And it's like, no, stuff like that is real.
And
people are human.
They're complicated, incredibly complicated.
Yeah.
Right now on the screen.
So, I was going to get to mole miners too. Or you want to ask a question about this?
Yeah. Because I dug into this recently. The data miners, courtesy of them, I realized that the mole miners, it's not just scripted garbage. Like, a voice actor read scripted lines. So when these things are mumbling and yelling, they have actual phrases. And when you read what the phrases are from the script notes, it makes them all the more terrifying and kind of sad in a way. Because they demonstrate care for one another when they're wounded, or if one of their friends is killed. It makes them so much more complicated when you make the decision to kill these, particularly when you have the treasure hunters who are just kind of going around, picking up some garbage. Maybe they work for Mother Murmurmurg, and all of a sudden you come along and you're like, I need a plan, so I'm going to murder you.
I will say that the stuff that we gave to the voice actors so they could say something shouldn't be taken as direct canon. It is, to some respects, that is a logistical thing. That is just, you need to give them direction, right, so they say something. Right. So I wouldn't read too much into that, but
but that's too much fun. We have to. Damn it. We did a whole episode. Ken joined me for a whole episode of that where we got really deep into each of the lines of dialogue and all that stuff.
Because we were talking
I will tell you for a fact that I was surprised at what data miners could get to, and do not believe everything you see in script notes or other things, because a lot of times, or even VO direction and stuff like that, a lot of times what we're trying to do is trying to get a performance, right? We're trying to help the actor hit the line, and sometimes it's just easier to just say, hey, it's like this. It isn't literally like this, but that is a shorthand that will get you to the right place.
Yeah, the emotion is more important than the specific information in that line. Yeah,
I was in a call yesterday or day before yesterday with someone, and the voice director said something that was just, that's not the way it works. And so I typed in to the actor, and I was like, oh, okay, no, actually, there's all this going on and all this. And then at the end, the actor's like, yeah, but you're basically saying it read the way that guy told me to read it, right? And I'm like, yeah, never mind.
Okay, yes. So is there anything interesting or that you're able to reveal about the mole miners? I'm sure you guys have considered a lot about their background and how they came to be and who they actually are. And some of those things we're able to discover through the game, and we've talked about this, like I mentioned in the episode that Ken joined me. Are there any bits of things that people just haven't quite caught yet, or just fun little snippets of information that you could share?
I think that they're mole miners are one of the more iconic things from the game, and I have a feeling at some point it will be explored. But at this point, I think people. It's one of those deliberate things that we've left open. We have ideas, but I think eventually what will happen is we'll have the right story, we'll have the right piece of content, and then I could see us going into it. But the other problem is there's so much, right? So, and, there's so many ideas that the team has, and they're so imaginative. So we'll see.
Underground mole miners city, like Blackreach.
That would be amazing. One of the things that I like to do, and anybody who listens to our shows knows, I like to speculate as if I was one of the writers, like, where would I go in this next year of content, and what things would I want to cover, and what things do I need to cover, because that's what the fan base is really looking for, and what things would, help sell more copies of the game because people really like this thing, and what things are really interesting according to the lore, and that would be really cool to explore. And as somebody who doesn't work in the studio, I could probably list dozens and dozens of things on a big old list that says, like, these are all the things I want to cover. So I can't imagine from your perspective, just the number of things you guys consider.
The funny thing is that, like, great loading screen.
These are completely random. I don't know what happened that evening. It's a virus that put it on my computer.
He doesn't even remember. He passed out drunk.
This is fine.
So, sorry, I just read some of the things. The script notes are still very indicative of lore. Oh God, no, please no. SS 2077, absolutely no. Do not consider script notes lore, because we certainly don't. But it's one of those that you want to see what the community says, but also I think as developers, we also have to basically. It's good to know the things that people are interested in, but we have so many ideas, and a lot of times I think what we're trying to do is find passion, right? It may sound weird, but a lot of times I'm not even thinking what will sell. I'm not thinking necessarily what is going to, I don't think dollars and cents. I think a lot of times I think about, like, hey, when I was 16 and just got a game like this, what would I want to play the most?
That's awesome. Yeah. That is really, really cool.
I mean, and then it's a matter of, and then sometimes there's selling people on it, but that's actually a healthy process where you're trying to talk to the other people and trying to get them excited. And I do find that, like, if you let talented people do things that they're passionate about, you almost always wind up in a good place.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
that's our whole philosophy of our network. That's part of what Ken and I have set up with us and our shows and the other podcasts, is that, like, I mean, just a quick aside, like, we don't create a network like other networks where I take a cut of their income and I tell them how they run their shows. It's all about letting the creators love what they're doing and do what they believe in so that they create the best things that they can create.
Tell the stories they want to tell.
Tell the stories they want to tell. Like, I am not in charge of anybody else on the network. I do my shows, they do their shows, and we all just work together in order to create the best content that we can.
No, I
think that philosophy is perfect.
No, and it's actually a rare privilege to being given enough latitude. Like, Bethesda's really awesome too. It's content people, because they let us run free. I mean, mind you, there's always feedback. There's always stuff, but I've had more freedom to tell the stories I want to tell, and hopefully enable the team under me to tell the stories that they want to tell as well, so that we wind up with, the most memorable experiences. I think you can feel the love. I think you can feel that there's no quest, there's no terminal, there's no note that doesn't have at least a little bit of TLC in it. And if you let people maintain that passion and you don't try to clip their wings or anything like that, you will wind up in a better place for sure.
Like, speaking of writing, when the time came to sit down and think, okay, end of year one, we need to go classic Fallout. Let's bring in NPCs. Let's tell a big story in Wastelanders. How does that process begin or work? Do you do you get on Todd's yacht and cruise to Bermuda and then just have cocktails and plan for a few weeks?
You end up like that screenshot, and by the end of the night, you've got everything planned out.
You guys spend a weekend in Vegas and then just kind of like, how does the writing process?
I wasn't invited. I'm jealous. No, I mean, I think Todd is instrumental, of course, for the entire studio, and very early on, he had a sort of big picture, and then it was a matter of working with him on, to sort of flesh out, like, this is the broad strokes of it. Mind you, these are things that we've been discussing off and on as possibilities throughout the development of 76. What comes after, right? What are we doing after? And but then once we kind of have a general direction, then it was everybody kind of coming together, trying to think about like what is next. I mean, there's funny as some of it's just logistics. Other people were busy doing pieces of content and stuff. So some people were sort of came in when they were available, and then everybody worked together to come up with the sort of the world state of Wastelanders. What's fun about Wastelanders is that at that point, the team that made 76, with everything super fresh in their minds and so many things that they wanted to do and stories they wanted to tell, then saying, okay, what happens next, right? Like, which is just so much fun. Like, you don't get to do that very often as a developer, to just say, okay, we are evolving this story. And it was really so much fun to just be able to sort of play with it. Like, okay, a year passes, these people come here. What's it going to be like? What are they going to do? Where are they going to settle? Like, what, and then we'd almost location scout throughout the world, saying, okay, let's look around. And then thinking about it like, okay, I'm a raider. I've come in through the north. This is going to be kind of our turf. What are the things that we want to do something with, right?
That's awesome that you guys got in the game to like walk around as if you guys were going to buy a house together. You're like,
no,
that's
absolutely.
Awesome.
But that's exactly what the characters in the world would do, is they'd scout out areas and then figure out where to settle.
That's awesome.
I mean, there was the one thing that is not quite right is that there's some areas that we nailed so well initially that it's just like, I don't want to touch it, right? Because it's too good an experience as is. But realistically, yeah, somebody would come in here. But you know what? There's so much space and there's so few of them comparatively that it's like, well, that little motel over there would work perfect. Let's just grab that.
If it were me, I just would have moved into a suite at the White Spring and called it a day. That's it.
But people keep nuking it. I mean, that's terrible location to live.
Everything's fine inside. It's fine.
Well, the funny thing is that we could see very early on that was a prime nuke site, right? And there were things we could have done to disincentivize that. But it was also kind of like, isn't it like, if there was one site that was going to be nuked more and more that you get to play a lot in, shouldn't it be the White Spring? I mean, that place is awesome. And the fact that it actually kind of became a player-made activity there, I thought was delightful.
Oh, yeah.
It was just such a good use of the space.
Year one, Friday, Saturday nights, it would be a bunch of us. We'd all go nuke the White Spring. We'd do the loop through, hit the golf course, try and bag as many legendaries as we could. Of course, you can't grind it like that anymore. It was just a little too good. But yeah, that was such a fun place to nuke.
Well, I mean, eventually we did tone it down a little bit because, there's stuff where it can start breaking it. But when we were nudging it, it was meant to be a nudge because I still wanted it to be, I didn't want people to stop, but I did want it to be like, you're dumb not to do this, right?
Right.
Yeah. So speaking of nukes, Raptor Moses in chat asked a question, just kind of on the scale of how many nukes were launched at Appalachia during the Sino-American War. Like, what are we looking at? 1, 10, 100? Like, what was the scale of what actually landed?
I actually think you can find many of the craters if you look hard enough. And that may be less of a theoretical discussion and more going through and counting and finding them.
Just counting them.
So, a lot of, mind you, there are some which were pure airbursts. So you're not going to see a crater for those. But it was overall pretty light compared to other places.
Yeah.
I think the players post-launch have nuked Appalachia more.
On multiple orders of magnitude, probably.
Appalachia's a tuple bird, though. She heals herself in a few hours. She's fine.
She comes back. Or you just go to another server. Another question that I thought was really interesting, and I'm sure a lot of people are asking, is how do you become one of the writers? How do you get that kind of job? How do you end up working with your team, for example?
God.
What would you give for somebody who is interested in pursuing that path?
Not even with
what
Bethesda,
advice
but
would
I
you
think
give them?
just in general to get started with writing in the game.
Sure, I can give some advice to that. I would say these days you are fortunate that there are multiple paths. I think back in the day, you sort of had to sort of worm your way into it. Fascinating stories from the old timers of how they sort of weaseled their way into it. I think these days, internships, if you can find them, there are not many places to do it, but internships have very high success rates of actually, at least my experience, that people, if you actually intern a place, often you're doing the job that you want to do. And if you do a good job of that, you can sometimes just, I've seen interns that have gotten to where they wanted to be years ahead of other people. But it's not for everybody. And it is, sometimes might be at a financial disadvantage doing that before you're hired. There's some fantastic schools programs for it, Guildhall, Full Sail. You can actually get degrees in this stuff, which wasn't the case back in the day. So that's very good. Another one is if you find that there's something you love, like if there's a particular genre you like, or game company, modding. Like I've seen some tremendously talented developers come from modding. And I think that's actually really, like, if you work in the tools and you make something and you still want to do it, that is a pretty good indication that you're going to be good for doing it for real. Because I think that it sounds idyllic, but it is work. It is definitely work. And one of the things that's very tricky, like if you could mod in a team, even so much the better, because the whole learning to do give and take and to collaborate is tricky. Like sometimes I think that, for example, some indies might have a more traditionally awesome sort of life, I guess, just because they can tell their story. But if you're a person that likes collaboration, I do not think I would make nearly as good stuff if it hadn't run the gauntlet of my peers, because my peers are able to point out problems, inconsistencies, or just able to poke, like, hey, this needs a little more love. And then if you look at it, you're like, yeah, you're right, it does. But it's tough. It's tough to take the criticism and grow from it. But
every writer needs an editor, right?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Do you have any favorite mods that you love? Ones that you've been kind of keeping an eye on? I'm just curious.
There was one mod for New Vegas I really enjoyed, the Doctor Who mod.
Oh, yes. Fallout New Vegas.
That was just so much TLC, and it was dizzying. It was dizzying just seeing all the things that were in there. And, as a Whovian, for me, it was also just delicious seeing a fan, sort of cross the streams, basically. So that was delightful.
It's impressive now. You see like some of the really ridiculously committed and ambitious stuff like Fallout 4 Capital Wasteland, bringing New Vegas into the Fallout 4 engine, and the ridiculous amount of work that they're putting into that, including like redoing voice acting just to make it happen, is just so ambitious and insane. But so amazing to see modders go to that level.
Oh, totally. No, it's if you can start getting down, because sometimes no matter what, like no matter how successful your game is, you can go to a forum and you can find someone that will make your heart sink a little bit. But if you want to raise your heart and to feel like, hey, what I'm doing matters, looking at mods, playing mods is a great way of doing it, because clearly you can see that people love this so much that they put their own time to bring something that they love into a setting they love as well, which is just wonderful.
Yeah, I think the advice always comes down to, going back to the job thing, do the job before you have the job, and prove that you can do the job and that you love the job. And then you're way more likely to get hired to actually do that for somebody else.
One last piece of advice, if you're trying to get into the games industry, take any job you can. Like just get your foot in the door. Getting your foot in any door sets you up much better to ultimately being where you want to be. For example, in my career, I think I have worked in every department. Yeah, I was production, QA, CS, HR. I sort of, not really art, but I was almost kind of a level artist for a little bit, but not really, and design. So for me, it's just like I've done it. But for me, QA was the foot in the door, and it was night and day. Like I would send resumes before I had a QA job, wouldn't hear anything. After getting a QA job, even for things I didn't think I was skilled enough or had the right things, I at least would get a call sometimes. So you just need to show that you've been in the industry and you know what's going on.
Yeah, that helps. Hey, quick question. I don't want to derail things too much, but in your opinion, according SS asked the question, is the Fallout Bible canon? And I know this is probably a very tricky question. I have my own thoughts on this too, but what do you think?
I don't think I can get into that. I will say that we're very the primal source of lore is what you see in the games.
Right.
Everything after that is varying degrees. I would say if it's not in the games, then we may use it, we may not. You may even there's things that we may fully no, this is what happened. No, that is just headcanon for a writer. That doesn't actually exist until you see it. So that's where I would go from that. So the funny thing is there are things I intend that have already been rewritten. But that's okay, because it's no, that was never in the game. Sure. All right. You want to change that? That's a great story. Go for it.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. If it's not in the game, then it's not in the game yet. Yeah, I mean, just flat out.
And it may never be in the game.
Inspiration from all sorts of sources, right? So, who's to say what we'll take and what we won't? So,
from a writing perspective, because you have a really impressive background as far as games that you've worked on, contributed to, written for, where do you find a lot of the inspirations for stories or characters that you come up with? Because there are a few, I think, that they kind of popped in there, or others that someone has a concept for a character and you kind of flesh it out, or is it a little bit of all of that?
Wow. That's a tough question. Showers? I mean, and I almost mean that seriously. I think a lot of times for me is I just think about things and I'm doing something else. And the back of my head is just always thinking, pondering, and then just makes connections. For example, today there was something I was working on and I just stopped because I'm thinking about this too much. I am thinking this to death. So I need to stop thinking about it. And sure enough, I started doing something. I think it was making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And then it was oh, what if we flip the script and it's this person doing that and this going on? And then suddenly it was yeah, all right, now I'm back in business. So for me, I think it is just a gestalt. Everything you read, everything you see, every people you hang out with, conversations you overhear, well, when we used to be able to go out, becomes kind of fuel for my subconscious, I guess. A lot of times, often what I'm thinking, though, is fun. Because stories and characters and stuff like that is there's all sorts of ways that you can tell that. But a lot of times I'm okay, but what would be fun to have all these story on too? Because I think it's very easy to get caught up exclusively on the story and your characters, whereas I try to always think about okay, what is the most entertaining way to experience this? What is the, like, I think like is it Belly of the Beast or Heart of the Enemy? I always get mixed up. The one where you're basically following Integrity's footsteps to where she's down in the glass caverns and stuff.
I think it's Belly of the Beast.
I always get those. I named them and I get them mixed up, but it's one or the other. And to me, it was just a fun way to get that story bit by bit through this scary, scary place in a very high level area, working with some very talented level designers to try to make it so that it's just spooky and you get this wonderful layered story that eventually you kind of get the whole thing. So for me, that was partially like, okay, I know what I want to talk about, but I also want to try to make it engaging to get to it.
This person, they keep highlighting it, and I promised I would ask. What is the official statement on the Fallout 76 player protagonist? Is their name the Resident, as seen on the Vault 76 ID card in official lore documents, or the Vault Dweller, as is heard in dialogues? The latter, which is also the name of the Fallout 1 protagonist and a generic term for vault-dwelling individuals.
In my head, I don't think we have an official one. 76ers, I often call them. It's kind of there's no. I have a feeling that different members of the team might have different shorthands for it. There's no one thing which I consider canon. So a variety of things.
Yeah.
Like I said, I often use 76ers. But like we also play with it, right? Like each individual character, we look at it from their perspective and what would they call someone that came from Vault 76? And, some would call them Vault Dwellers, perfectly appropriate. 76ers or Hey 76.
Or if they're mad, hey douchebag,
exactly.
like whatever they're feeling in the moment. Sure.
Is there another? I'm back here at Fort Atlas. Talk about a space that got recently so overhauled into such a beautifully cool installation here.
Yeah. Every time I see that dome, I think of R2-D2's head.
I mean,
the
from this angle,
is that there are places which we knew for a fact that we needed to do something awesome, and this was one of them that people kept pitching ideas for what to do there, and either there was just never anything that was quite good enough for that location. Same thing with the space station. Like, there were a variety of things that were just like, this is just too cool. We wanted to do the location justice, and this is an example of like where we were like, yes, now we know what to do with it, and just making it so much cooler. So I think that there's still some targets of opportunity for us to, areas that are just waiting for the right story to come along.
This installation reminds me so much of Helios 1 from Fallout New Vegas, where you have this arcane Great War super weapon just waiting for somebody to come along and misuse it. Like, here you have a working weather control device. We may have a problem here.
Oh, yeah. No, the funny thing is that there were versions. Never mind. Lots of ideas were thrown at certain things. Lots of them. But like I said, it was just all like sometimes I think you're worse off doing something half good than just not doing anything at all, right? Like, I think it's better to wait until you have something to where you're like, yes, this dots the I's, crosses the T, this is ready to see the world.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, any other places that are really your favorite that you'd like to show off and talk about a little bit?
Oh, goodness gracious. Favorites, places.
Or even a place where, because Lord knows that year one, we didn't have any NPCs. So you have sprinkled throughout the world these beautiful little hints of stories, things that took place there. Whether we have the Mistress of Mystery or even some of the.
I think there's a lot of these that still a large portion of the community haven't fully picked up on.
Yeah.
I mean, they may have played through the quests, but they, you know, because you weren't being walked through this story in the same way that you would be in a traditional Fallout game, they didn't read all the terminals, or they didn't, you know, look at all the little details or discover all the little environmental things. And so there's things that are, there's a lot of holes in a lot of people's knowledge, I'm sure.
One thing I love about the Mistress of Mystery specifically is the fact that it touches upon Kent Connolly. Like, Kent Connolly sent Shannon Rivers a piece of fan mail, which I think is just delightful that we, you know, had the foresight to do that, to sort of all plug it in together, because Kent Connolly was alive back at this point, which is hilarious. I think he even sent a message to her husband as well, you know, which I think is, you know, a sort of fun way of tying the canon all together in a nice little bow. Thank you. I love Kate Connolly too.
Yeah, fire in chat.
Well, I do have to go, but man, I wish you guys the best, and I hope that you hit. It looks like you're going to hit your goal, no problem.
Yeah, we're at 47,000. Just
come on, guys! It's
shy.
just 3,000 more. You can do it.
This is amazing.
And really, I don't know if he's going to watch this, but I can't praise him enough. The person who carried us today, who everyone should go and thank this person in their stream. It's not here on Twitch, but Many a True Nerd on YouTube is just a powerhouse today. The speed run that he's doing there, he blew the doors off fundraising today. Definitely, if you're not a fan of his, go check him out on YouTube, because what he's doing right now is sensational. He's really going to work, and his community is turning out in a big way. I can't believe we're just 3,000 shy here of the total, which is just crazy. And today's only Wednesday. We have more of the week to go. We're only ending Sunday, so we're really going to make a difference with these kids.
Well, I will say that it is working on Fallouts is a dream come true, and that the fact that the community is wonderful and is generous as it is it makes humbling. I don't know the right word, but it makes me even more honored to be doing what I'm doing. So I hope you enjoy what comes from 76 and other games that we will be working on. So,
ooh, that's exciting.
Give generously, you know, it's for a wonderful cause.
Yeah. Hey, as a kind of a last thing, I know you can't tell us spoilers about what's to come, but how excited are you for this next year of content and where things are going to go? Things that we haven't even heard about yet.
It is amazing to consider all the things that are coming down the pike, and just, you know, it's wonderful that we've taken something so far and we have plans to take it even further. So, you know, so hold on. It's going to be a fun ride.
Awesome.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, Ferret,
it was wonderful.
This has been absolutely amazing, and I'm so glad we got the opportunity to geek out here for a little bit and talk about lore. And thank you everyone for showed up and your really amazing questions.